Welcome to Cybersecurity Where You Are, the Center for Internet Security's podcast. I'm Sean Atkinson, CISO at CIS.
And I'm Tony Sager, Senior Vice President and Chief Evangelist at CIS. Cybersecurity affects us all, whether we're online at home, managing a company, supporting clients, or running a state or local government.
So join us on Wednesdays as we discuss trends and threats, explore security best practices, and interview experts in the industry.
Together, we'll clarify these issues, creating confidence in the connected world.
Hello and welcome to the show, Cybersecurity Where You Are. I'm Sean Atkinson, CISO here at the Center for Internet Security, joined by the host with the most, the Hall of Famer, the difference maker, Mr. Tony Sager. Tony, how are you, sir?
Great, Sean. And we can't wait for this episode because just the warm-up has already got me inspired.
Absolutely inspired and an inspirer, Mr. Ed Scotus, the Godfather himself. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's wonderful to see you again.
Fantastic. And Senior Vice President and Chief Engineer here at CIS, Marc Sachs.
Hey, everybody. Good. Great to see everybody, too.
Great to see everyone. Okay, so we're jumping into a topic dear to many hearts here, and it's that of the Enigma machine. Enigma from World War II has had many different variations and a secret that was held for many, many years. But let's set the scene. Marc, if you could set the scene for us, what is the Enigma machine and what could why should anyone, in 2026 still care about a wooden box of rotors from the 1930s?
That's a great question, Sean. Yeah, the Enigma was made fairly popular by the Nazis in the 1930s and 40s in World War II. It pre-existed that time. There was, in World War I, a little frustration with communications happening so fast, and classic ciphers up to that point were manual, little rotors and things that you had to manipulate by hand. But communications had gone much, much faster. So they needed devices that could keep up with this new thing called radio and this older thing called telephone, which was all the way back to 1875. So around 1919-ish, 1917, 1819, there were several inventions that came forward, taking the popular typewriter, which was also an invention of the late 1800s. And with a very simple question, can I convert a typewriter into something where as I type in a message that the output would be enciphered? Little hard to do onto a piece of paper. So the breakthrough was, how about if I use electrical switches, and I illuminate light bulbs, and then the light bulbs, as I press a key, let's say I press the A key, the H light bulb may light up. Press the next key, another light bulb lights up. And so 3 or 4 inventions came out about the same time. The one that became the most popular is what today we call the Enigma machine. But even through the 1920s, it saw commercial use, widely used by businesses so that they could encipher business traffic to go across telegraph lines and other places. So it wasn't invented by the Nazis. It was actually invented much, much earlier and had widespread use through the 20s commercially. And it came to fame, of course, in the 1930s as the Nazis came to power and they nationalized this and forbade the commercial use of it any further. Other machines were developed, of course, but the Enigma is the one that's the most popular. And there's a lot of lessons, which we can talk about later in the podcast here, that we can bring forward to current day. Mm-hmm. Lessons about engineering, lessons about assumptions, things that mathematics that they assume were very, very strong, but problems in the way that they use the machines allow the Allies to crack those codes.
And I think one noteworthy thing, so it was invented by a guy, electrical engineer, named Arthur Scherbius. And Scherbius sold it as a business machine, like Marc said. Mm-hmm. And he died in 1929, actually, in a horse-drawn carriage accident. So it's important that the creator of the Enigma machine never sold any to Nazis because he was dead before they came to power. And he did have a business going, but while business started booming when the Nazis started buying this. And from what I understand, they made about 20,000 of them. So that's a lot. For that era. It was used to encrypt all tactical communication by the Germans through the war. And today it's estimated that about 300 still exist.
Wow. Yeah. And that, looking back across the history of security and cryptography, right? This is a major stream of a thought here around the unbreakability, right? This search for either a perfect crypto system, a total security system, and in terms of the calculations, right? How do we measure strength of cryptography? It usually has something to do with calculating. If you have to guess a secret piece of information, right? How can you guess and try enough times in a sort of a practical lifetime to break the system? And so there's been reams written about the mathematics of the Enigma and so forth. But you hinted at, right? The good attacker, and you've spent your life at least pretending to be the attacker, pretending as far as I know. But how does one attack a mathematically unbreakable system?
Well, that's the thing. Sean's question originally was, why would we care today? And there's a lot of examples from it. I mean, the birth of modern cryptanalysis came from the cracking of the Enigma. So there were issues of human use of it. There were weaknesses in the actual algorithm that it was based on, and so forth. So why do we care about it today? Because we can learn from it. It's an example of all those different mistakes and bad things that can happen that can allow things to be cracked. But I also love it as a symbol. This is the big thing for me. It is a symbol of really brilliant people working really, really hard to try to hack something, right? This is the folks at Bletchley Park, primarily Brits. Americans were involved, but it's primarily Brits. Original Polis research contributed greatly to the cracking of Enigma. So really brilliant people worked really, really hard to hack something. And because they succeeded wildly in it, according to Winston Churchill, World War II was shortened by 3 years. That war, according to Churchill, would have gone on for 3 more years. And just remember, it ended in Europe in April of 1945. By August of 1945, it hadn't ended in the Pacific yet, and the United States had atomic bombs then. Could you imagine if that war had gone on 3 more years? Oh my goodness, what devastation. I mean, it was already the worst war, right? So I view the Enigma machine as a symbol of how hacking can actually be used for a noble purpose and to save lives. And that's why I find it so important and really fascinating.
Yeah, and I look at it also through the lens of a mechanical achievement. This predates the electronic era. The encryption strength pretty close to, and after you subtract off all the user parts of it, was like DES in a sense, which was in popular use through the 1990s before triple DES came out. So if you actually do the math, it's 3 times 10 to the 114. I mean, it's an impossibly large number of possible combinations, which the Germans could do that. They can do the math all day long. And, they're looking at that and saying, wow, there is no way that anybody's going to crack something that's that mathematically high. It's kind of like the debates we have today over quantum proof encryption. And, we're looking at how large can we make these keys so that even a quantum machine can't crack it. And through the lens of the 1930s and 40s, before there were AI and Android and Microsoft and Linux, all the stuff we have today, that was a very large number. And it's all produced mechanically. But there were also engineering trade-offs, things they made in the design of the Enigma machine to make it simple, to make it usable by soldiers on the battlefield. So they had to engineer in some pieces that's in the end winds up weakening it. So while the math is still strong, the actual way you use it operationally was somewhat weakened.
Yeah.
That was figured out by the Allies, and that was one of many methods they used to crack, in addition to human error. And we can talk about some of the other methods that the Allies used beyond just cracking the actual math of the machine.
One of my favorite examples of what you're talking about there, Mark, is the Enigma machine has no space key. There's just no space key on it, right? There was a trade-off, an engineering trade-off. You're building these things. You're going to make 20,000 of them. You have trade-offs. So they didn't have a space. So they used an X to represent a space. Now, what is the most common letter in the English language? English. It's E, right? But what is the most common character in written English or in German? Most common character is a space. So the clear text put into the Enigma machine had a lot of X's because it's the most common character in the German language, right? So when you're trying to crack something, if it doesn't have a lot of X's in it, you've probably cracked it wrong. So it's just a simple little thing. No space key actually makes it easier to crack because you're narrowing the number of characters, first off, and you're also changing completely the statistical distribution of characters by taking some character that doesn't exist very much in German, X, and making a whole lot of them. So it's one example of something that made it easier to crack because of an engineering trade-off.
Well, you alluded to it, Mark, but I don't know if this is where the term "the human is the weakest link" came into play. But I think that was a big part of using repeated letters and things of that nature was part of why the Allies were able to identify patterns and be able to do decryption in that space. Could you give us some thoughts there?
Yeah, one of the things I like to remind people, the average age of the Enigma operator on the battlefield in World War II, these are 19, 20-year-old boys. There were no young boys. And if you think through that lens, I give demonstrations to high school kids, college kids, and others. And when it kind of resonates, like, wow, that could be me. I say, what's on your mind? When you're 19 years old, you're cold, and you haven't been fed in a while. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about protecting, the fatherland? Well, obviously, there's other things on your mind. And so the Enigma operator, typically it was one or two people assigned to that machine that would run it, because it was a little complex, and you had to have some trust there. So you didn't have, 12 soldiers lined up, any of which could be running that machine. It's generally going to be one or two. Same thing with the radio operator, the person behind the Morse code key. There are patterns you can pick up on, by the way a person types out a message. So the Allies could pick up on who's the actual person. They could assign names to them. This is Hans, this is Fritz, this is Werner, because they could tell how they encipher messages. They could tell how they transmit them. And it didn't take too long to figure out some of these kids were developing their own little shortcuts. There's a thing called the message key, 3 letters that would be transmitted between 2 operators just to do the initial setting of the rotors. Well, they would repeat the same 3 letters. It might be the 3 letters from their dog or from their girlfriend, or it might be from Heil Hitler or wherever it came from. The Allies can pick up on this, and they can realize, okay, when Fritz starts his messages, he always uses these 3 letters. When Hans starts his message, he always uses these 3 letters. I'm a little oversimplifying. That's the kind of human part here that was fairly easy to exploit by the Allies once they realized they're not just up against machines, but they're also up against the human mind. And the human mind is a lot more predictable than we thought it was. And so a lot of psychology was learned also in World War II, learning about how adversaries will communicate in the face of an enemy, and how do we exploit that human weakness.
Yeah, they used to call those 3-letter combinations sillies, CILLIES, because there's this one operator whose girlfriend was named Silly, and he'd do CIL at every message. Another common one was HIT and LER were 2 other common sillies, as they call them. So yeah, really interesting.
Well, those, and you've spent, and you do a lot of the work in the penetration testing, right? And I often say, and you can reflect on this, that attackers are more natural system thinkers than defenders. So defenders, because you're left, you're sort of defending a turf or a place or a thing or a channel, but attackers, are looking for whatever edge, right? And so they might be, why would you go after the mathematically impossible when I can go after the human fallible? And so that's the kind of mindset, right, that you have to bring to that. And those are great examples of right, the system being attacked.
Yeah, I've seen a quote. I forget who it was that said this quote, and I don't want to misattribute it. But the quote is essentially, defenders think in lines, attackers think in graphs. And, so this sort of multi-dimensional thing. Look, we need defenders to think in graphs too, is what we need to do, right? But yeah, there's just, you're looking for that weakest link. And if the math is pretty solid, there are many weaker links than that.
And see, this is one of those lessons we bring forward to present day, is the human side of it. And if you look inside the OT world, operational technology world, as well as the IT or information technology world, we can have the best products and services out there, the best engineered solutions for security, but humans can make human mistakes and completely undercut. I mean, this is, we see this all day long with people who click on links in email, through phishing or whatnot, or download malware from websites. We do everything in the world to try and stop that. but human behavior sometimes can hurt you. We've seen cases where employees will set up drop sites, outside of their protective world from the corporations trying to protect the information.
Yeah.
They feel they're so special, they'll just copy it to a USB key, or they'll move it over to a cloud storage or something, and expose everything.
No, I often say, if you to the you talked about the engineering trade-offs, right? And I often say, if you make security too expensive or too onerous, then your users become your attackers, and they're not bad people, right? They have a job to do. And so, but okay, you guys are old enough to remember, right, when thumb drive became a verb, or Dropbox became a verb, right? I've got the Dropbox around that's Sean, that CISO. He won't let me get my job done, and I have important work to do. And from their perspective, that's rational. And the trade-off for the CISO is, would I rather define something that's less than optimal, but I can monitor, or that I can live with, in order to give them capability? And there's no single answer to that, but it's.
And Sean's team, he's got a red team, that works for him, that looks at us in CIS and trying to find weaknesses. My understanding, as best I've been able to figure out from the research, and maybe Ed, you might have looked into this as well, is the Nazis weren't really big into red teaming, so they just trusted the stuff. They believed the Enigma worked very well. They could find no evidence of compromise. I mean, there had been suspicion, that maybe the Allies were listening, but in their hubris, they were thinking there's just no way. I mean, mathematically, they can't do it. And so red teaming their own systems to try and find weaknesses generally wasn't happening. Now, to say the same thing on the Allies side, I don't know that we were big into that either. But that brings us right up to present day. Are we red teaming our critical systems to the right level to try and find those weaknesses? Ed, do you know anything about what they might have been doing?
I really like what you said there, Mark. The Nazis didn't like red teaming. So there's another reason to hate the Nazis. They just didn't like red teaming. So there you go. This is very valuable. But the lesson is, I think, if you design great security that's really solid and mathematically provably secure, but you don't take into account human foibles, human misuse of this, and you don't educate the user. Security awareness is actually important. A lot of people dismiss it and say security awareness is a waste of time and money. I don't think it is, because if the people don't know how to use things appropriately, they won't use things appropriately. So Sean, back to your very original question, there is so much we can learn from the Enigma machine, and so many examples that we could apply it to.
100%. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're talking about military-grade encryption. We're talking about how you would hire a team today based on Bletchley Park and their hiring methods and personnel. And then what is our Enigma right now, and what we're looking to in towards the future. With that, we'll be right back.
Ever feel like cybersecurity is a giant jigsaw puzzle and someone forgot to give you the corner pieces?
Or the box lid, the table, or the time?
Exactly. That's where the CIS Secure Suite platform comes in.
It's your intuitive starting point for cybersecurity. One dashboard with the functionality of Syscat Pro dashboard and CIS CSET Pro built in.
From policy to implementation, it puts the puzzle together for you. CIS controls? Check. CIS benchmarks? Double check.
And it's built for CIS Secure Suite members. You're getting a streamlined experience with the guidance that turns data into decisions.
Like seeing where your biggest risks are and knowing exactly what to do next. Share results easily with internal security teams from one great tool.
Plus, it helps you align with frameworks like NIST and ISO, making you audit ready.
Whether you're a small team or a cyber underdog, the platform gives you the visibility, clarity, and confidence to act.
So if you're ready to stop guessing and start securing, visit cisecurity.org/SecureSuite to learn more.
CIS Secure Suite Platform. Cybersecurity simplified.
Okay, we're right back. Ed, I have this question for you. So every product markets itself now as military-grade encryption, unbreakable. When I hear those words, I think of you and I think it's, a new challenge.
There you go. Okay,
Let me prove that. Any thoughts there?
I view that as marketing, and you might as well say blah, 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 instead of military-grade encryption. Look, you can have military-grade encryption and have a terrible solution with all kinds of side channels and breakages and all that kind of stuff. So I think that is marketing, or as one of my friends, Mike Poore, used to say, marketecture. It's just an architecture with marketing, right? So yeah. So, but you really got to test it. So if a vendor says, "Hey, military grade encryption or unbreakable," say, "Okay, how have you tested that? How have you evaluated it? Who has evaluated it? How did they do it?" You need to ask real questions about that and evaluate the
Absolutely.
answers.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're trying to introduce a new cipher. This is a proprietary method. NIST hasn't looked at it because I don't want them to look at it. And NSA, it's too extreme for them to analyze. Caution flags just go up everywhere. And I can't tell you how many times I see that. Particularly, I've got a lot of background in the OT world. Vendors that come in with products that are going to be for critical infrastructure to provide secure pathways for communication, and they claim it's all proprietary, it's been well tested, blah blah blah, but it doesn't conform to any standard. And they say, yeah, it's military grade, but yeah, why? Because it comes in a green wrapper? Is that what makes it military? I mean,
No, our position. So I was running the vulnerability stuff back at NSA during the time of DES and then AES and all that. And at some point in that history, the official position was top-notch cryptography has become a market commodity, right? Why would you ever try to create your own? And anyone who does is frankly a fool, because the cleverness of world-class cryptographers, right, to break such mathematics is unstoppable. And so all the brain power that went into, say, again, the different variations on DES, but also AES, that's anyone who uses a non-standard thing is fooling themselves. And there's no security through obscurity. Remember that term, Marc, right?
Exactly. And to go back to the German example with the Enigma, the Germans believe that the wiring of the rotors, this is what we're talking about. This is a rotor here. It's got 26 entry pins and 26 exit pads on the back. Oh, there we go. My rotor's bigger than yours. But the wiring of these rotors was classified according to the Germans. Even the Allied systems, rotor-based, the wiring was rotor. Well, the wiring is the algorithm, right? So today, in modern terms, we understand public algorithms is what we want. We want many eyes looking at it. Is there a weakness? Is there a problem with that algorithm? It didn't take us too long to figure out the wiring of these things. Heck, all you got to do is steal one. That wasn't so hard to do. As it said, there was tens of thousands of these devices made. So stealing a rotor, not that hard. Recovering the wiring, not that hard, but yet the Germans believed that has to be protected. That's a national secret. What they missed out on, what you really have to protect, this is a key sheet, is the key. That's what has to be protected, not so much the algorithm or in the mechanical sense, the wiring of the rotors, which is what sets up the actual algorithm through which we get 3 times 10 to the 114 combinations.
So one of the things I thought was very interesting, and I've seen, a number of movies. The Imitation Game was one that I thought was very well done, but it showed that they were hiring classicists, crossword champions, chess masters, linguists, not just mathematicians. So, Marc, I want to focus here because again, we had an episode where we were talking about your career and all the different elements that took you to being here today with us. If you were to stand up a security team tomorrow, who would you hire and what mix still matters in the space?
I think the number one trait is curiosity. Not so much the ability to perform wizard-like math, solving math problems, but are you naturally curious? And you're never satisfied with an answer. You're always asking, what if or why? And so,
5 R's.
Yeah, if I could bottle that up, like the curiosity of a 5-year-old, if I could just bottle that up and then put it into a 30-year-old analyst, that'd be awesome. That's what I want. It's also interesting if you look at some of the career patterns. Music plays a lot in this. So a lot of people in this career field are musicians, maybe not professionally, but they were in the band. They know how to play the piano. They can play an instrument, things like that. That's kind of an interesting common trait. That lends me to, not only is it curiosity, but logic, to be able to think through a process step by step and piecing it together. That's what musicians tend to do. They can carry a tune, literally through, and they can hear harmonies and what balances. If something's not right, a musician can hear that. Somebody without a musical talent doesn't understand that something's just not tuned right. And so if you can, if you're around a machine, you can hear if it's not working right. If you're around a software system, you should have this intuition that just isn't right. So these are the things I'm looking for. Not so much did you get your degree from MIT? Do you have, 15 CISSP plus plus minus minus, that's great, that's wonderful. But how do you think? What goes on inside your head? That's kind of the world that we're looking for in terms of, really good cybersecurity types of people.
Agreed. Now, Ed, hire and manage some of the elite penetration testers, respectfully, in the world. How do you look for talent, and what shines in some of those spaces as well? Because I know you have musicians, artists, and many different people as part of your organization.
I think Marc summarized it well with his discussion of curiosity and creativity. So when I'm interviewing people, they're usually surprised about my interview. They're expecting me to have them solve detailed technical problems. But by the time they get to me, I know they're capable of that already. I'm looking to see, can they go outside of those problems and do other things? So I ask them, what are their side projects? And do they demonstrate genuine curiosity? What are their hobbies? Also, capture the flag events help a lot, because that shows that you're curious, that you like to solve problems, you go out of the way. So, how well did you do in Holiday Hack Challenge? Or how well did you do in, National Cyber League or something like that? So those are the kinds of things I tend to focus on. I really don't focus on degrees. So here I am, the president of a college, and I don't focus on degrees when it comes to hiring my people. So don't tell anyone I said that, okay? But I don't focus on degrees. If you got one, hey, that's great, right? If it's from our college, even better. But, as long as you can do the job, as long as you have curiosity, as long as you're a cultural fit, that's what I'm really trying to measure. It is interesting if you have hobbies and there's sort of a diversity of things that people do on the team, but I don't like artificially try to create, I've got somebody who is an artist and somebody who's a musician and somebody who likes to kayak and somebody who mountain climbs. That just happens. That just happens by itself. So I'm not trying to shoehorn that in. But there was this really interesting article I read a couple of months ago by Daniel Meisler. I don't know if you have heard of him. He is an AI thinker and a cybersecurity person. And he said this, it was really interesting. If you take an AI, say a frontier AI that's just trained in everything, right? It's ingested much of the internet. It's actually better at doing cybersecurity things like hacking or pen testing or what have you, than a specialized model that focuses just on cybersecurity. Why is this so? And Daniel wrote this article about some ideas of why it's so. And the thought there is, well, it's ingested logic. It's ingested philosophy. It's ingested stories of how different things have happened in the past. And that's why I do think a well-rounded person for a general penetration testing job, a well-rounded person is actually perhaps even better at that job because they'll see things or think of things or can get into the user's head more than maybe somebody who is just focused exclusively and entirely on cybersecurity. Now, that said, there is a need for that latter person because they can usually achieve some pretty cool stuff too. But I do like to have generalists with wide ranges of knowledge. And Daniel Meisler has observed that kind of thing happening in the AIs themselves, which I've seen in my career.
Interesting. And Tony, I lent into, the system thinking element as well. I think very important there. And as you've seen, I mean, you must have hired thousands of people over your career. What do you look for today, or what would you be looking for today?
For me, both Marc and Ed hit it very well. And it's, I remember one time I was talking with the NSA recruiters, and it was probably the mid to late 80s. And he was lamenting, we haven't hired an engineer from, he named like top 10 engineering schools or something in the last couple of years. And the advice I gave him, I said, well, stop looking there. At that time, we couldn't pay the salaries that were competitive. I said, but find someone, I said, hit some of the liberal arts schools. Someone can handle a rigorous math program, is very teachable, and probably looking for a job. But you're looking for that, all those attributes that you talked about, right? This curiosity, ability to sort of deal with the abstract, and this sort of synthesis model of how you do things. And that carried on for some years. I was part of the startup of one of the elite development programs, and one of the my heroes at the National Security Agency founded, and he brought us into a room one day, and he said, I think the future of the kind of analysis that we were doing, right, for for both offense and defense is interdisciplinary. And here's my vision of what a program would look like, and what it would take. And there were a bunch of us, both sort of leaders in both offense and defense analysis. And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "I'm in." Absolutely. And it created this program to focus on bringing that group together as a cohort. Because many, in a big institution, the kind of people you were looking for may or may not find each other naturally. And so creating a program that deliberately started with a cohort group, say of a dozen or 2 dozen people, chosen for that set of skills, who are going to find jobs kind of elsewhere, right? But they will bring that thinking, that team building, that synthesis to lots of different places. And that program, I'm almost certain, still exists today and became the model for a lot of that development. And so you want to encourage then this part of this, as you look at this as a community, and Ed, you're so heavily involved in education, right? A lot of this is about recognizing the power in that synergy of people and bringing those ideas together and saying none of us has this complete tool set to go after this. But let me so yes, I am right with you guys. But let me take kind of a complementary question here, back to where we started. Right? We talked about the hacking, the testing, and all that stuff. But maybe, Marc, you're the right person for this because you've worked at the national policy level. Here, the Enigma, right? One of the great stories of World War II. You can't understand World War II without understanding the Enigma. What about the policymakers on the Nazi side? They had complete confidence in their system, right? They were making big decisions based upon their belief that their systems were secure. And so you've been in that kind of level, right? Trying to decide, what is our national position and what does it take to give you confidence?
I think part of it comes down to the culture as well. You've seen the movies, you read the books. The culture inside wartime Germany was very top down. Hitler was in charge, and anybody who brought bad news to Hitler oftentimes was brought outside and shot. He did not want to hear bad news, and again, this is historically been found out. I suspect there were plenty of people who knew there was a problem, who knew that we needed to have different approaches, we needed to have different policies, but you couldn't bring it up to the national level because that's the bearer of bad news. We only want to bring good news, up to the boss. And so culturally, in any organization, you have to be careful if you're in a leadership role to not turn off bad news, because policies will then tend to gravitate towards, I only want to hear good. And so people,
that is so foundational. You're exactly, Marc. And wasn't there's a counterexample on the Churchill side, wasn't there, of protecting the secret, right? That he chose not to stop.
Yeah, it was really, that's a great story. Go ahead. Yeah.
The truth is so precious, it must be protected with a veil of lies, I think is what Churchill said.
Yeah, because then in this policy world, the policy of how much information do you release? We're seeing this play out in real time today with the UFO thing. So the White House is big into releasing secrets about the UFOs. Well, the secrets about not how the Enigma worked, that was fairly widely known, the math and stuff, but the operational intelligence derived from us, being able to read the adversary's messages. That knowledge had to be protected for lots of reasons. People's lives were at stake. And that becomes a national policy, is what are you protecting? When you can't protect everything, what are you protecting? And so having some insight into what is truly a national secret and what isn't will drive, policy making at the White House, at the Kremlin, Berlin, back to Nazi Germany. And I don't know that the Germans fully understood the power of information and what should be kept secret and what should just be abandoned and just let it go away. So, and it becomes a resource question. So I think it's a really interesting idea to dig into the policy side versus the math side, the military side, the strategic pluses and minuses. But what is the national policy when it comes to the use of a technology? And again, we see this play out in real time right now. We're struggling with AI. What is the national policy on the use of these frontier models that are introducing something brand new to us that we've only thought about and written about, and we've got movies about it. Now it's actually playing out, and I don't know that the countries around the world are really ready from a policy perspective to deal with these brand new technologies that are coming at us faster than we can react in human time.
Boy, that's so true, and we're we're right in the middle of that, right? Helping our adopters, our customers, sort of sort through the the mythology of mythos, and do I panic? Do I throw away my IT and start over? When how are we going to manage these? These are quite complex issues that are, and I don't think a week goes by without some new news that has to be factored in.
Yeah, AI for us is like the Enigma machine was 80 years ago. It's most people who operated the Enigma had no idea how it worked. I mean, they knew it was an electromechanical device, but they didn't know the engineering behind it or the math behind it. They just ran it. Senior leaders made decisions based on, if messages got through and so forth. AI is in a similar kind of boat. Most people have no clue how it works. You just a user. You're fascinated with what it can produce, but you're not questioning is what it's producing actually correct. Can my adversary listen in on my prompts? To going off to Mythos or to wherever, to Anthropic, or to OpenAI. These are really interesting policy questions beyond just the power of artificial intelligence. But are there other things? Are there lessons that we've learned over the decades and centuries that need to be applied here in terms of protecting information, given these new tools and new technologies that have been brought out on the table for us?
I hope our listeners appreciate the unique opportunity. You two are the biggest crypto nerds that I know personally, with your own Enigma machines. Is there like a whole cult of you folks that have collected these things and where they are?
Well, there is actually a list on the internet. There's a spreadsheet.
Gotcha. Okay.
It doesn't give the specific location, but the countries in which all of the 300 or so known Enigmas are, the serial numbers, the type of Enigma machine.
Wow.
There is that spreadsheet, and mine is A726, and A726 is on that list. So yeah.
How about a quick plug for your trip to the National Cryptologic Museum over near the National Security Agency?
Oh yes, years
ago.
That? Oh, that was so much fun. Years ago, we held a SANS event at the National Cryptologic Museum, and we had about 100 people, 120 people. Mm-hmm. We served ice cream there, and we just nerded out with all the great stuff. For the listeners who have an opportunity to go there, they really should go. It is, right between Baltimore and DC, a little closer to DC, and there's so much to learn there. It's really well laid out and well thought out. I know, Tony, you've been involved with the museum for many years.
Sure.
And a lot of your friends work there and such. It is a national treasure. It really
and people can see right in front of them, right? The Enigma machine, the bomb, the crypter, and it's a pretty modest museum, but I mean it's an untouchable piece of history.
Yeah, and oftentimes people just drive right by on the BW Parkway.
Don't even
realize.
Yep.
If you just exit and take 20 minutes and go check out some pretty cool artifacts.
If I have some extra time, I do stop in just for a half hour, even an hour, because there's so much to see and think about.
And by the way, many people look at Enigmas as it's this rare element called unobtainable. It's just no way I'm going to have one of those. Well, obviously Ed's got one. I've got one. They do show up from time to time, not only at exorbitant prices. We've seen them go for over $500,000 at some of these worldwide auctions. But not too long ago, one showed up at a flea market in Bucharest, and it was found in a barn. The finders didn't know what it was. They had it labeled as old German typewriter with a price tag of 100 euros.
I
would argue, go to these flea markets, go to places like for old German typewriters, and you never know, you might find one.
There's an alternative though too. So this here is something you should definitely check out. This is called an Enigma Touch. It is a fully functional Enigma machine implemented as electronic circuitry.
Yep.
And it's actually beautiful. It's $185, but you've got your rotors here. And listen, I hope it'll come through on the microphone. Can you hear that? Or it makes the same sound as an actual Enigma machine. And,
great.
You got the little letters and stuff, and you can rotate things. It's got a plug board on it. $185, and it can emulate every different kind of Enigma machine there is. So
let me work on Sean's Christmas list right
I'm telling you, these things, of course, it's really well built too. I showed it to my team a couple of weeks ago, and several of them bought them. So yeah, it's a fun, pretty cool thing.
We'll leave a link for the listener.
The Enigma
in the show notes. Absolutely.
And I make no money on this. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
It's just, it's really cool.
That's an unpaid endorsement. I appreciate that, Ed.
The listeners here, if you're interested in just learning about it, there's an app for the Android, there's an app for the iPhone that will emulate the Enigma. Those are free, download them. And the really cool thing is they can talk to each other, and they're actually using the real encryption, the real algorithms, the real rotor settings. They have other types of cipher devices, the Alka, things like that they're just in app form now, which is really cool for teaching people if you want to know how it worked. And they produce the same output as the real machine.
The nation needs a new generation of cryptographic nerds. So you guys are doing your part to spread the word. We appreciate that.
So Ed, what is our Enigma right now? What's the system we're trusting today that someone somewhere is quietly taking apart?
Software supply chain. We're starting to see the wheels come off now, but they've been coming off for years and years and years. And I think hacks are happening right now through supply chain attacks that we will find out about 5 or 10 or more years from now, wondering how the heck did they get in there? Oh, it was because of a supply chain attack in 2022 or 2025. The supply chain is a mess, and it's getting worse and worse all the time.
I guess the paper surveys are not going to save us, Sean. We're going to have to figure out something better. Darn it.
Exactly right. Very good. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode today. Thank you to our audience. Thank you, Tony, Ed, Marc. Absolutely phenomenal episode. So much fun. And again, thank you to our audience. Remember to subscribe in all the usual ways with your preferred podcast provider. Catch us on YouTube at The CI Security. If you have a question, comment, concern, drop us a line at podcast@cisecurity.org. And with that, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the podcast today.
The thoughts and opinions expressed by our podcast guests are solely theirs and do not necessarily reflect those of CIS.
Tune in on Wednesdays for a new episode. And in the meantime, visit our website at cisecurity.org.
Together, we'll continue our efforts of creating confidence in the connected world.